So yeah, I'm here to troubleshoot, guys. If you've got any strokes that you're challenged with, definitely I've got all kinds of my VIPs here tonight joining us. Hello, Lynn. Nice to see you again. Seen some of you today in the series, and yeah, it's wonderful that you come back and play with me again some more. Is there anything that you guys are really challenged with? Because sometimes when we do these meet and greets, I end up with a bunch of new people. So I definitely like to go over those 10 basic strokes with you guys and get you guys playing and practicing and all the different crazy dances that I do, and keeping you guys warmed up with those basic strokes, because a lot of times they're the ones that are evolving. And if you're not comfortable with those basic strokes, then definitely it's going to be harder for you to evolve them and change them and make them dance in different ways, right, in different directions, and scooping them in differently and all that fun stuff. So definitely, like, through the program, I guess Penny's the one that's only one here tonight that's rating almost 3/4 of the way through, which is doing wonderful. Do you have any input for me today, Penny, as a newer student? Maybe remind some of us older ones, things that we didn't we took for granted that you might be struggling with.
Right now, the only thing that I'm, still trying to work on is getting enough paint on my brush when I load it. Because if I don't press hard, I end up with all of the goop on the side. And if I press a little bit harder, then I'm taking all the paint off. So I'm just trying to find the perfect pressure when I'm loading my brush. But other than that, the courses are really, really easy for me to follow, and I'm having a ball. Awesome.
Yeah, definitely. And every time you keep playing, these little balls will come to light, and definitely it'll get easier for you, hopefully, as we keep, trying to twist and change these strokes, and play around with different colors. Let's put some Violet Pansy on my brush. And definitely the type of, is there a particular stroke that you find it happens to you more than others?
It's not really the stroke. It's not once it gets on the paper. I can't keep enough paint in my brush at the tip on the chisel. All of my paint is either going up towards the ferrule or staying on the plate. So I'm either pressing too hard or not hard enough, or I have too much paint or not enough paint. I'm just still working on finding the happy medium.
Okay. No, that's awesome feedback. Yeah, it's definitely sometimes like when you're squeegeeing that paint on the angle and just...
When I try to do that, I end up with nothing on the chisel. So I'm using one angle or something.
Maybe there's not enough paint in your blending pile?
How do you keep the paint in the blending pile?
Well, a lot of times it'll ride out to the sides. And and don't worry about it, let it happen, because if you are too tight with it being too thick, then you definitely might be too gloopy. And then as I'm working, I don't know if you've ever seen me do that yet, I'll grab that paint and put it back where it belongs. See if you
I have seen that, and I have to do that almost every stroke.
Yeah, maybe you are putting a little bit too much pressure and you're pushing it or squishing it right out. So maybe a happy medium of pressure, but then also my pressure will change depending on what kind of stroke I'm doing. If I'm doing a lot of chisel work, a lot of daisy strokes, then I want to pick up that paint more on the third of that paintbrush. I'll pick it up a little bit more like a squeegee so that it ends up on the edges more. But if I'm doing a shell stroke, then I want to make sure that brush is loaded deeper, and then I'll flatten my brush right out so that I'm making sure that I've got paint up higher. So definitely that's why I asked you about different strokes. Do you notice it more on? Because it depends on what you're doing. If you're putting pressure on any stroke, you want to make sure that paint is loaded up, and then you're going to guide that paint along. But if you're doing a lot of chisel strokes or small little leaves that you're hardly doing any pressure on, try to be aware of how much pressure you're doing. Oops, gloppy. It happens too. I back up, clean off my brush, start all over, and then continue. Right? So it's about trying to control those globs. But what I'm saying about pressure is if you're only putting a quarter pressure down, you don't worry about loading your brush so much higher up. But always be a little bit more than what you need. So again, daisy strokes, maybe a smaller teardrop, you're hardly putting any pressure on those strokes at all. But those ones that you've got to really travel around, maybe some of them bigger leaves, then when you're putting more pressure and you're doing those bumpy strokes, then you definitely want to have your paint up a little higher. And when you want a flatter style, I pick up the paint a little bit flatter. If I only want the paint more at the tip, then I'll be a little bit more up and down and squeegee that paint with a little bit of pressure so that I'm picking it up where I need it for those smaller strokes.
I just never seem to have any paint at all in the middle of my blending pile. It's always like right at the plate. So I think I'm pressing too hard.
Probably, yeah. Yeah, like you're really pressing that out at maximum when you're doing it. Yeah, back up a little bit then. Right? Only press as hard as you're going to do the stroke. Right? And like I said, the paint will get away on you. So,
that what you just said, only press as hard as you're going to do the stroke.
Yeah.
That, no, click.
Good. Okay, I knew there'd be something that come out of my mouth that would help, hopefully. I'm always trying to come up with different ways of saying the same thing. Right? So that's a lot of the awarenesses I've been coming up with lately too. The more I keep playing and the more I keep showing you stuff, and you know, I all of a sudden I took things for granted because it's just maybe common sense to me, and I don't even realize that what I'm doing sometimes, and to break it down in words. Right, so this is why I love having this little troubleshooting session once a month, and then plus you guys know that I'm available private through your session, through your program as well. So anytime you're having a hard time, you know, you don't have to wait till the end of the month. Definitely, you know, send me pictures of your work. If I can't explain through a text, like through a message, then, you know, if we can meet on Zoom private, sometimes, you know, that's that 5 seconds it took to get the aha moment, you know, that you've been struggling with something that, you know, just didn't click. So yeah, definitely I'm here for you guys. And I love hearing the feedback because that always inspires me to you know, make more videos and more troubleshooting sessions, you know, geared to stuff like that. Right? Definitely there's times that when we're really stretching that stroke out, you're gonna run out of paint. I just go ahead and pick up more paint and restroke. Carry off where I left off. Right? I put a little bit too much pressure. I got too much space here. Sometimes I'll just use the back of my brush to fill it in, go over it again, and fix my paint. I still have a dry spot here. Right? So these bigger strokes are usually where people are more challenged with because they run out of paint. Again, I just kind of fix that area. Now I'll just go over it once just to smooth it all over, and all that paint will help glide each other. If you're fast enough, wet on wet, manipulating this paint, you know, then it'll all start to slide a little bit more because you got enough paint, especially on this dry paper. You definitely got to keep pushing it and making it, you know, where you can add on is a big thing, right? Carrying on where you were, trying not to keep when you're changing colors, it gets more difficult and blends. But if you got a good amount of paint in your blending pile, usually it's very easy for you just to come over, scoop up a bit more. You'll still be on that same gradient and carry on with whatever stroke you're trying to do. And then if I have to, I'll start off right over to the beginning again and smooth everything over to make it all match seamlessly. And if you notice, I haven't even put any medium in my brush yet. Right? I'm really trying to force that paint to get in there and work it. especially on paper. Right? And you guys hopefully have played a little bit on canvases. You're starting to see that it's so much easier there. So much more. Yeah, so much more forgiving. Right? So when you're doing it on paper and you're just practicing, try just to take it as it is. It's just practice. And the more you get comfortable playing and trying all these different strokes, playing around with, and then try not to make your gradient pile too big and too long. Really just, I should have stopped right there. Because the more you put your gradient pile too long, you're wasting your paint over here too. Right? It's unloading over there. So try to stay a little smaller. Right? And then, try to play with all those variations, dances, up, down, adding a little bit more on the tip, right? Trying to tip a little bit more. When you're really gloppy at the beginning, remember you can just go 1, 2, 3 to smooth that glop out and then carry on again. Just back up a little bit where you noticed that you don't like it. Right? And then you can just carry on and finish the stroke. Right? So a lot of people are expecting miracles out of their strokes. They just want it to be perfect and they want to do it fast and they think that it's, something that's, especially on paper, it's never going to happen. Right? So definitely slow down. Let that paint absorb slowly. Don't be afraid to go over it twice. Right? To perfect it. And the people that are taking the glass program now too, they're definitely starting to learn that, even the slippery surfaces like glass, it has its challenges too, right? Because it's so slippery, and then you get translucent color, and again, so every surface has its challenge too, and that's why I really want to focus on the chargers for Flower Series 3 to do something, new flowers, and then plus new surfaces to play on. Okay, so this stone foam platter here is, very similar to glass, right? So you don't have it absorbing the same way as the paper sucking it all up. Right? Because a lot of times people are going for that floating medium and then they're not getting a good stroke either. Maybe the brush, the more water you have in there, even if you don't clean your brush properly and you have too much water in your brush, it flattens things out, it makes things muddy, it makes things, especially when you're trying to do little tiny chisels. And then you have maybe too much, you went for that medium. You don't need really medium for chisel strokes, but you have it in your brush. You're going to see that, your brush spreads out, gets really slippery, and fans out, and it's a little bit harder to get those smaller little chisels. And again, it's pressure, very, very, very light touch. Also, having a brand new brush with a beautiful chisel makes a big difference too. Alright, but definitely when I'm trying to do daisy strokes with too much moisture, it just gets more gloopy, and you don't get as much concentrated color.